We have got Football in Focus from Kickback Jacks on Battleground Avenue back in Kickback Jacks. Time to kick back and relax at Kickback Jacks. And maybe later tonight we'll have Jax Hackett in to talk about that, how we can use that name. Tonight, Joe Sirera's with us, News and Record, talking about all the games from last week and what's going on this week. Boy, this week, I think a lot of the talk this week's been that Dudley at Southeast game. Seems like that's going to be the one at the top of people's list to be sure to a must-see or a must-follow game this week when the Falcons host the Panthers down at Bill Slayton Stadium. Got it in, Coach Bill. There you go.
Yeah, I think the surprise in this game isn't that Dudley's unbeaten. It's that Southeast is also unbeaten going into this game. Their schedule hasn't been nearly as strong as Dudley's, but a good win over Northwest, and they've played good defense to this point. I think that's kind of what they've hung their hat on. They're still transitioning from wing tee to spread on offense and kind of still getting the hang of that, I think.
Because they were expecting the offense to be picking up the pace some this year too, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that was what a lot of the coaching change was about. They wanted to be a little more up-tempo offensively, throw the ball around a little bit more, and hopefully take advantage of the athletic ability that some of their guys have with that kind of an offense.
I would think they got the right guy running the show as far as Ryan Douglas goes, right? Quarterback, he's had some experience, a junior now, right?
Yeah, and played regularly since he was a freshman. He's been split time the first year or so. He's got a big arm, heck of a baseball pitcher, closer on the baseball team. He got the save in the semifinal of the tournament at the Hoppers Ballpark against Wesleyan. That was Wesleyan's only loss all year. Yeah. So tough kid, smart kid. He's got a lot of things going for him. It's just a matter of getting, I think, as much as anything, the offensive line familiar with blocking on pass plays, slides, and everything else, because they were wing tee for so long. It was all drive blocking and traps, and it's a little different now.
Got to get used to that pass blocking. I guess for some guys, pass blocking is like a vacation. Other guys, they got to be more disciplined in pass blocking. Got to make sure they don't go downfield too early. But this kid, pulling out all the names, at least one name I've heard of, this kid, Johnny King. I understand he's a force along that line.
Yeah, Jonathan King. Talked to him before the season. Big, strong kid, another smart kid. I mean, we've got a lot of smart high school football players around, but there's a pretty good group at Southeast and at Dudley. And he loves to drive block. He said that was the biggest adjustment for him is pass blocking. You're letting guys come to you and you're absorbing the contact, and he really likes run blocking because he gets to go downhill and dish out the abuse and the contacts. It's a little bit of an adjustment, but a big, strong, talented kid.
Yeah, a guy a couple of years I really liked. That was that Evan Surgeon, also wrestler. That guy was a big, strong kid, a good
state
football
champion
player.
wrestler. Yeah.
I think he made state champion last year, right?
Yeah, and helped that team win the state title also. Yeah,
very good defensive lineman, good offensive lineman, good lineman all the way around. And they still got the kid Trey Love. It seems like he's been around for 20 years. Been around a long time.
East Carolina commit. He played a lot as a sophomore and was an impact guy. When he brings it, he's as quick off the edge and as strong on the pass rush as anybody in the county, I think.
And you've got the opposition, Gerald Simpson, now becoming adjusted and acclimated to being the top man for Dudley. The Panthers quarterback doing a good job for them, manages the game well, at least he did last week against Hillside, against a very tough Hillside Hornet team. Helped get the win, run the ball, pass the ball, and he's doing a good job back there.
Hasn't turned the ball over, and that's one of the first things that Coach Stephen Davis asks of his quarterback. Their strategies: we're going to play defense, we're going to move the ball, we're going to run the ball well, and we're not going to turn the ball over. And he's done that perfectly. Certainly not the kind of numbers that Hendon Hooker put up the last few years, but they're not asking him to be Hendon Hooker. They're asking him to be Gerald Simpson, and he's done a pretty good job so far.
One thing he may do better than Hooker in some instances, sometimes he may be a better power runner. He may take a little more abuse because he uses his body, exposes his body more, but he's definitely a strong kid and may at times be a little bit better power runner when they need maybe that extra yard, half a yard, that type thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what they do, a lot of the read option and other run plays with the quarterback are based on him running between the tackles. And I think, as he said, I think he can take that pounding a little bit better than maybe Hendon could. I don't think they wanted to risk Hendon Hooker a lot. He was a lanky
him outside.
kid. Right, he's gotten a lot stronger now that he's at Virginia Tech and in a big-time strength and conditioning program. But I think they were a little more concerned about just they're playing to a player's strength. And Gerald Simpson's a better runner inside. Hendon Hooker, I think, was a better runner outside. And they use their personnel the way it's going to be the most effective.
And with Simpson's personality, also being a defender at times, playing some of the defensive side, he used that body, taking taking a few blows, taking some
yeah.
hits, and kind of stick the body in there to kind of find that extra edge. And as those guys run time after time after time, they learn how to get that little extra inch, a little extra edge to be sure they get that first down.
Yeah,
theirs is running inside, not as much trying to get to the sticks on the outside, the chains.
Yeah, I mean, he's used to lowering his shoulder and delivering a blow, whether it's on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side, and he's good at it. He's strong enough. He's a tough kid. I mean, he's done a nice job for them. He really has.
That kid, the new kid on the block, is number 83. Last year, Kenji Patterson was number 83. This year, Faraji Joseph.
Yeah.
I'm going to get his right.
That's the official kicker number.
Yeah, exactly, number 83. But Faraji's there this year. He's been doing a good job getting the ball in the end zone on kickoffs, and he's made most of his extra points. And Kenji made a field goal last year. And I think everybody just about stopped all the presses and left and went downtown.
Yeah, we were there that night. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were going to send up fireworks and flares from the press box at Tarpley Stadium.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this new kid, Joseph, looks like he's going to pick right up and carry them. And it's crazy as it may seem, it may come down to that one game where they do look to the kicker to maybe try to win a ball game for them. They have to.
Yeah, and you mentioned his kickoffs. I think that's been the strength of his game so far this season. Is I don't know how many kickoffs I've seen in Dudley games that were touchbacks, because he may not hit it a mile high, but he bangs that ball through the end zone, and that's all at the high school level. Once it crosses that goal line, that's the end of the play. And they're never giving the other team good field position that way. And field position, when you've got the kind of defense that Dudley has, field position is key. It's important.
You think about it, sometimes kickers try to approach the ball, the straight-on kicker tries to kick it a mile and a half deep and long, doesn't get as much. But the guy who swipes it from the side sometimes gets a better boot on that ball and gets more distance. It may not be straight distance, but it's still in the end zone. It's still a fair kick. He may get more extended distance than the regular straight-on kicker does.
Yeah, and
the soccer guys have that tendency.
I mean, some of his kickoffs that have been touchbacks almost look like a corner kick. They've had that little bit of swerve to them, and that's his approach to kicking the ball. And credit to the Dudley coaches for recognizing that that's the best way for him to kick off, and gives them the best chance of covering it or not getting it returned, and it's been very effective.
And credit to Dudley coaches for finding him too. I think he was with the soccer team, and not some coaches, football coaches, years gone by, many years ago, would look at a soccer player. We don't mess with the soccer team. But nowadays, the coaches realize this kid can help us. Let's bring him on board with open arms. Come join us.
Sure, there's a lot of teams that are using guys in both sports in the fall. I go way back to the 70s. Really good Penn State teams had an old veteran coach. I think he's in the Soccer Hall of Fame, Walter Barr, and he had sons, Matt and Chris, who were phenomenal kickers and All-American soccer players. And they would literally have some boosters, private plane, fly them from either a soccer game to a football game, or a football game to a soccer game on the weekends, so that they could play both sports and not alienate either coach.
Let's think about a kicker the other day, because kickers, back when I was a younger kid and a little bit older kid following football, I didn't think as much about it. But this day and time, you realize how specialized those kickers are. The guy came back to my mind from years ago. You talk about the Barr brothers back in the day. Tony Franklin from Texas A&M used to get barefooted quite a bit, and had that 60-yard capability back in the day.
Yeah, he was drafted pretty high one year, and a guy, I think he might have gone in the first round or early in the second round, Russell Erxleben from Texas, who went to the Saints and was a total bust in the NFL. But in college, those guys were banging him through from 65, 67 yards, and it was a different time. Now they were kicking off a different tee than the kids are allowed to use today, a little bit higher, and I think special teams have gotten to the point where if you're kicking from that far out, the ball's got to have a low trajectory early, and the coaching of special teams at the college level, they're going to block most of those long kicks. If you're going to kick it from that far out and they can return it, it's discouraged.
I'm just wondering about the pros a little bit now, about strategy that special teams coaches might have about guys returning the kicks and about the touchbacks. Sometimes I wonder, maybe the kicker may in the pros, since you get on the 25, if you've got a good kicker, a placement kicker, maybe sometimes it may be worth a try. But who thinks about it? I think about it some, trying to place that ball so you can go down and maybe still cover the kickoffs. Because this day and time in pro football, most of you don't even cover kicks anymore for them, basically because they're all going in the end zone.
Right. I mean, I've seen a few teams in certain situations where exactly what you said. They'll go for placement. They'll try to put it between the hash and the sideline at about the 5 or inside the 5, and figure if you put it there, if your coverage team does its job, you only really have to cover half the field,
Right.
and you cut down the possibilities where the return guy can escape, and
Push him inside the 20 again.
It can be a smart play at times. I've seen some college teams this year who have kickers who supposedly can knock it through the end zone, trying to pin teams inside the 20 for the same reason. The risk is that if you blow an assignment on your coverage and that guy runs past people, he's going to run all day.
Kind of like the old extended pooch kick in some ways. Which
Very much so. Yep, you still see that a little bit at the high school level.
Oh, yeah,
I've seen some games this year with a few where they saw that gap between the front line and the second or third line, and they try to drop it in there and get down on coverage, and somebody's got to fall on it, or they're going to have it recovered for an onside
ball,
kick.
Exactly. But the one I think about sometimes, they try to pooch kick it so much, they may kick it to the 30. The guy covers there. You give him the 30-yard line. I think you're giving him too much.
Yeah, you don't. I think anything that's farther out than what a touchback would be, then it defeats the purpose. But it's some teams don't have a guy who can bang it into the end zone.
Yeah, it's a luxury to have a guy like that. He can put it where he wants to put it.
For sure.
Just there with us, News and Record. They've got coverage coming up tomorrow night. They've got coverage all week long because you have a lot of different things you do on different days. You've got the inside slant. You've got the players to watch this week. You got the player interviews all the way through starting Monday. Got the top 10 poll comes out on Monday. Got it pretty well covered all the way through.
Yeah, hsextra.com is the high school side of our website. We try to get something fresh on there every day, just like you guys do at Greensboro Sports, and it may be your stuff may be different from ours and vice versa, but there's a lot there for fans who want to look at either one.
Yeah, sometimes it may be the same. Going to send them over to check out those polls because the polls, I don't know, sometimes I think you can't get enough of the polls. I mean, you got the AP poll, you got the ncpreps.com poll, counterpreps.com poll. I mean, if each one's a little bit different, they're all kind of fun to look at.
It's polls. The whole point of polls is discussion. It's getting a conversation started. I mean,
such and such got left out. Why did this guy get ranked here?
The whole college football playoff thing. It's most interesting to me when somebody's got a grievance or a beef and there's a discussion. And for a while everyone was saying, well, we have to have a playoff. We have to determine a true champion. All those years when there were split champions, people were talking about college football for a week or two after the season. Now the national championship game's played on a night, and a day or two later, it's all over.
Right.
It's nice to determine that national champion in the best way that you can. But the poll discussion, I think, in a lot of ways, is great for the game.
How about this? Let's go to the pro game just a second or two here. Carolina Panthers, Christian McCaffrey. Did the Panthers show too much of their hand in game one versus the 40th? Because in preseason, they didn't show all the things he had going on. But, man, that first game last week against San Francisco, they had this guy, he was running to the left or to the right. He was catching swing passes. He was taking end arounds. He was returning punts. I mean, it's almost like in the first half, boy, the Chris McCaffrey show just bloomed. It just went crazy.
That's what I think folks had been expecting to see from the Panthers with McCaffrey. That was why they drafted him. They wanted to have a guy they could use in a number of different ways and take some of the pressure off of Cam Newton to make plays all the time. Get another playmaker, and Curtis Samuel's another guy they drafted for that reason. He got a late start because of an injury with training camp. But I think in the preseason, you don't want to show too much, and you're rarely putting all of your first team guys together at one time. Once you get to the regular season, it's on, and I don't think anybody's really holding anything back at that point. And if you may even have a case where sometimes in the first game or two, you're showing things that aren't going to be a staple of what you run, but just to give teams that many more things to prepare for. Any team that's going to face the Panthers the next few weeks is going to look back at that San Francisco game, see all the things that they did, and have to spend time during the week preparing for each of those things. And in a game where you're ahead and you're in control, it's nice to be able to do that and give the other team something to think about.
Funny, too, because right now he's taking a lot of pressure off Cam Newton. He also taking some pressure off Jonathan Stewart. Stewart in the second half just to open up and control the game. So he also may save him a few more games and a few more carries, maybe a couple less injuries for Stewart this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ron Rivera, the coach, said his ideal would be to get each of those two guys somewhere between 15 and 18 touches a game, and that would be a little bit down for Stewart. But if he's fresher and he's a different type of look, a different type of back than McCaffrey, it gives the defense something else to think about. And maybe they're looking for McCaffrey to be running outside or bouncing, and all of a sudden Stewart is going between the tackles, hitting the hole fast and hard, and it's a different look.
It allows him to continue to run hard because he's not worried about, well, I may get injured. We've got a little tweak right now. I've got to let up a little bit. He can go hard all the time because he's not carrying quite as much.
Yeah, it lessens the load.
May not have to carry it all. I mean, it's almost unusual to go through a game and see him not carrying the ball. Notice third and maybe 2 going around the outside. You almost expect him to carry the ball almost every, but seeing a lot less than that these days.
You know, his shoulder is probably still not 100% back to where it was, and you know, he and Luke Kuechly are the franchise, and they're going to protect those guys as best they can, and you know, it could make him a more dangerous quarterback when he does take off and run if it's not as frequent and expected by defenses.
How about a college thought or two? How about Will Greer up in West Virginia? Is he a Heisman hopeful? And how about what he's doing for him?
You knew to ask me about West Virginia on that one. That's my alma mater.
Yep.
I think he's gotten off to a great start. He missed some big throws in the first half of their opener against Virginia Tech that might have been the difference in that game, where he had guys open and he overthrew them, didn't put enough air under the ball. He's got such an arm, a former Davidson Day player, and holds just about all the state passing records. There's times when he just wants to, he's got a 40 or 50 yard throw to make, and he just wants to gun it on a direct line, and sometimes his receivers can't catch up with it that way, or the defense can make a play on it. And I think as he gets comfortable again after sitting out a year and a half, gets a little more air under the ball. He shredded East Carolina. I mean, it was 49-3 in the first half at one point, and he was throwing deep, he was throwing short, he was throwing intermediate routes. He was killing it. I don't think he's a Heisman Trophy guy, at least not this year. If he comes back next year and puts up big numbers this year, I think most of the time to be a Heisman contender, you have to either have the hype going into the season, or you have to have one or two big marquee games where you really get everyone's attention. And the Virginia Tech game for West Virginia on national TV on a Sunday night might have been it, but he didn't win. And I think that's going to pretty much preclude him from being a contender this year. But if he chooses to come back for one more year, I think he might be in the picture.
It seems like he landed in a good place for a while.
Yeah.
He was having trouble trying to find a place where he could land and restart after Florida, but it's like he found the right place to land at. And I'd even heard East Carolina mentioned in the discussions when he was looking around for new schools to go to. But West Virginia seems like that's the perfect spot for him right now.
Yeah, the coach there, Dana Holgerson, is one of the. He's kind of gotten away from it and run the ball a little bit more the last few years. But he's an air raid guy from the Hal Mumme, Mike Leach air raid school of offense.
The old Kentucky coach Hal Mumme, huh? Yeah.
Yep. He was Holgerson's college coach, and I think it was Iowa Wesleyan back in the day at the D3 level. But it was a good landing place for him. Funny story about that. Another transfer, former West Virginia quarterback, Clint Trickett, whose dad is the offensive line coach at Florida State. He transferred to West Virginia, played 2 years there. If anyone's watched Last Chance U the last 2 seasons, he's the quarterback's coach in Last Chance U. He's since moved on to Florida Atlantic as a tight ends coach. But when Will Greer was looking at colleges, he is sitting on a plane in a window seat, and Clint Trickett gets on the plane, and his seat is assigned next to Will Greer. Just an odd coincidence. I don't know where they were flying, but they were flying somewhere. And they get talking, and Trickett basically, even though he's not coaching or doing anything at West Virginia right now, sold Will Greer on West Virginia. And it was just a lucky happenstance. He was strongly considering them anyway, but having another former transfer quarterback from a Florida school who could tell you this is how it's going to be, this is, you've got a chance to be the starter as a transfer, and you could be very happy there. It made a difference. But Greer's a very mature kid. He's been married for a couple of years. He's got a young child. His dad was a great coach at Davidson Day Chad. He's now at a charter school down in South Carolina starting this year. But he can throw the ball, and he's just a very smart, heady, mature quarterback, and West Virginia is lucky to have him.
What about Hendon Hooker, Virginia Tech? Do you see him possibly redshirting, or do you see him maybe down the road transferring, or what do you think the future is for him right now?
I don't ever want to talk about it.
We always talk about that, too, because he's always only one injury away from being the starter.
Right.
That's how it works, too.
Exactly. I don't ever want to talk about a kid should transfer. There's so many reasons to stay that are the reasons he went to the school to begin with, and I think that's true of a lot of kids. I think you look at college basketball, 500 to 600 Division I transfers a year.
Exactly.
Everybody's got an itchy trigger finger and aren't willing to wait. And Coach Stephen Davis said he told Hendon's dad, Alan Hooker, when they announced that Josh Jackson was going to be the starting quarterback, don't let him get down. He is, as you exactly said, one play away. I think if there's an injury to Josh Jackson that prevents him from playing beyond one game, I think the red shirt will probably come off Hendon. If it doesn't happen, I think they're comfortable with an older guy, a junior college guy. A.J. Bush is the backup, and redshirting Hendon. But The frustrating part down the line potentially for Hendon is that Josh Jackson's a redshirt freshman. He's a true freshman.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't be in the same class if he redshirts, and who knows what happens. But like I said, it's just a matter of get your reps in when you can, be patient, keep your grades in order, and you know that's not a concern with Hendon Hooker.
He's gonna have that covered.
I mean,
now.
he's almost done with his sophomore year already because of middle college credits that he had. You know, smart kid. Just stay focused and keep doing what he's doing. He was in contention because of how quickly he picked things up and how good he looked, and that doesn't change just because the other guy's a starter. Just be ready, and you never know when things will happen.
Yeah, we talked about the 500 number for Division I basketball. It was the kid from Greensboro Day, the point guard that went. Darius Moore went to Presbyterian.
Yes.
Now he's at Lynn University, I think in Florida. So he had to make that same kind of move.
Coaching change was what happened there.
Yeah.
He and Reggie Dillard down there also.
He's got 1 year left to play, I guess, right?
Yeah, and you know that's a school that has had a connection to Greensboro Day and Guilford County, but that head coach has moved on, and that was the big reason I think that Darius moved on also.
What about Eastern Guilford versus Page last week? The Wildcats definitely in that game didn't have the finish to take it at the end, but again played well and neck and neck with Page, and one of the better games you'll probably see this year.
If you like defense, that was a heck of a game to watch through the first half and at times in the second half. Doug Robertson told Wyatt Smith, your guy, and I after the game that a lot of people might have thought that first half was ugly, but he said he thought that was great football. It was great defense. It was 0-0 at halftime, and neither team could really get anything established, and that's because you had two great defenses. The second half, it opened up because of a few turnovers, Thomas Murray flipping the field with a punt, a few little things like that happened, and then in the fourth quarter, Eastern Guilford didn't have the ball until that last drive in the fourth quarter, and they had to open it up and throw. They didn't complete a high percentage of passes on that possession, but they moved the ball and they got into field goal range. And I incorrectly said after the game that Stephen Scott was the one who got a piece of the kick. It was actually B.J. Turner. Got a partial deflection on that the field goal attempt at the end. It was about a 43-44 yarder by Colin Smith. You know, Eastern Guilford got in position to have a chance, and they held at the goal line to hold Page to a field goal and have a chance. But Page seems to have that one killer drive.
They got that knack to pull it off, don't they?
Well, and every game that I've seen this year, they've had one drive of about 15 to 20 plays, mostly on the ground. Dudley, it ended in a fumble down at the 3, but it's been a key in a number of their games where that offensive line, Nick Makovic, the rest of that crew, just start pounding on the defense and running effectively, and that's a tough team to play against. When they can play defense the way they do and they have that potential to grind out a drive on you and almost take a whole quarter off the clock, that's a tough team you don't want to face.
And you see, too, your better kickers in that game, too. The Colin Smith kid from Eastern Guilford. Then you've got Thomas Murray, the kid from Page, do the job he does. Two excellent kickers.
Yeah.
You mentioned Murray had the 44-yard punt, and then I think Smith had the 44-yard field goal. Both those guys kicking quite well, and it kind of came down to those guys in that game.
Yeah, Colin Smith had a pretty good game. He was banging him through a field goal attempts from 45, 48 yards warming up, but there's a big difference between warming up and in a game when you've got to deal with the hold, the snap, the pressure from the defense, and it was an example of what I was talking about earlier with the really long field goal attempts. The natural tendency for most people is to hit it with a lower trajectory, trying to kick it as far as you can, and the lower the trajectory, the easier it is to block. But special teams, we talked about kickoffs earlier, special teams play a big role in just about every game if it's close.
And you can tell for certain that Page turned out a pretty good one, too, and Harrison Kaiser. Now Guilford College did a good job for them. We're blessed a lot of good kickers in this county.
Yeah, I mean...
And Cody Creed at Northwest, another guy on that same list.
Yeah, he's an invited walk-on at App State. The young man up at Northern Guilford, Nick Carter, again, a soccer player, football player combo. Very good kicker. I'm sure I'm leaving some guys out in that conversation. But yeah, we've had a lot of good specialists around here the last few years. Kaiser, I still remember a punt he had a couple of years ago when they were at East Forsyth that was about 50 yards down the right sideline in the rain, and he had that funky spin on his punts, and the return man came up to get it, and it just kept going. It went right over his head and went out at about the 3.
Yeah, it just kind of died, went out about the 3-yard line.
And flipped the field, changed that game.
What about Ragsdale? 3-1 facing Northeast on Friday. Ragsdale, you think they'll be 4-1 by Saturday?
I picked Ragsdale in that game, but I think that's a really interesting matchup of two teams that have been under the radar. I mean, the thing most people keep coming back to with Ragsdale was that game against Dudley where they give up 74 points. But they were hanging in there for a while. It was 35-21, and then Dudley pulled away. When you've got Malachi Manus running the ball and running back kicks, Travion Pratt's a pretty darn good receiver. Devin Boykin, Coach Johnny Boykin's son at quarterback, he had a nice game last week, became more of a factor in the run game. They've been a pleasant surprise to me. And Northeast, another team that's under the radar, but Earl Bates, wherever he goes, his teams fly under the radar. I said it a couple weeks ago until you look up and they're in the third round of the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to take a little time for him to get that score.
No question.
I think it'll happen though.
Yeah, Tariq Bridges is starting to get a feel for things on offense. It took a while last season at Southern before they made a few moves at quarterback and switched some things around and got the offense going. But Coach Bates can flat out coach, and he was a great hire for them. He lives right by the school. He's not a guy who's going to look to go somewhere else. Give them some stability. I thought Jason Limper did a good job with starting to turn things around.
And that offense clicking.
Yeah, that was a little bit of momentum going into this coaching transition, and that's an interesting game. I mean, that's one of those under the radar games that could be a lot of fun to watch.
What about back on the colleges? UNC and ODU. UNC 0-2. They get a win. They're on the road at ODU. That's going to be interesting in itself.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising that they would go up there and play in a smaller stadium, but you're kind of seeing that a little bit more to get
the whole series
Division I teams to come to your place. It's a lot harder and a lot more expensive to get them to just come to your place without a return game. If you're not going to give them a return game, you're talking $1.2 to $1.5 million if it's an FBS school. And a lot of schools would rather go 2-1 and do that, play 2 at our place, 1 at your place, and not have to give you that massive guarantee. And this is an example of that. This
kind
is
of like Wake Forest, Appalachian, work that deal out there.
Very much so.
Yeah. And the money
it's economics. I mean, scheduling in college football is all about the money.
What about Baylor? 0-2 at Duke, 2-0. Duke get off to a 3-0 start. Be big for them. Baylor has lost a couple of games. They haven't played well yet.
Yeah, Baylor is dealing with a lot of issues because of off the field stuff. Led to Coach Art Briles and his staff leaving. Jim Grove filled in last season for them and did a respectable job. Did nothing to really hurt his reputation as a football coach, but Matt Rule came down from Temple, and it's a mess right now, and it's going to take a while to clean that up, and I do not envy him that job. And David Cutcliffe is going to probably get to 3-0 for Duke this week, I would think.
Quarterback's named Daniel Jones, the quarterback for Duke, looking real good.
Yeah, I mean, when David Cutcliffe has that kind of quarterback, they're at the point now where they're a solid program. I mean, they're not going to contend, I don't think, anytime soon for a division title in the ACC, but they're a team that can cause a lot of problems for a lot of teams.
And you look at a couple of the college games. How about the Utah State? Don't know much about them. They're 1-1 at Wake Forest, 2-0. Wake Forest could go 3-0. It'd be a great start for Dave Clawson and the Deacons.
Yeah, they did that a few years ago too, and I think some of their start right now is a result of the schedule, but Utah State is one of those teams that I saw them a little bit against Wisconsin, but other than that, they kind of fly under the radar. I don't even know if they're in the WAC or the Mountain West, but they'll pop up in a bowl game once in a while in Boise or somewhere. And you go, oh yeah, Utah State. I don't know enough about.
If they're a beatable team, Wake is glad to get them right now.
For sure. I mean, it's that's the kind of start that as you said, Dave Clawson needs to get, and things are trending upward there too. They've got a lot of good local kids. Some who are playing. It looks like they're going to redshirt Mr. Beal from East Forsyth this year, but they've got some talent in that program. Yeah.
What about that Southwest Guilford and Northwest Guilford game? Non-conference these days, but a big game for both communities. And Southwest has already lost to one rival. Got beat 20-19 by Ragsdale last week. Don't want to have to happen like that 2 straight times against a rival.
No, these are 2 teams that in the old Piedmont Triad 4A used to see each other for the last 4 years. So, they know each other. There's not going to be a lot of surprises there. New coach at Northwest, Kevin Wallace, but he was at Glenn as the offensive coordinator, so they kind of know what he's going to run. The story there last week was not having Jacob Leonard for Northwest. Johnny Pagano, wide receiver, moves over because of an injury to Jacob Leonard, and he didn't have a great game, but he managed the game, and he did the one thing that you've got to do if you're the Northwest quarterback is get the ball in the hands of Cameron Cloud,
get
it in the hands of Trey Turner, and then when they start spreading out and focusing on them, hand it off to Caleb Andrews and just get the ball to your playmakers. He did that, and if he can do that again, I like their chances. Southwest has kind of been inconsistent. They had the 2 games without Jaron Rainey, went 1-1. He comes back, they win, everything looks good, 27-0, but then they miss a couple of extra points and lose to Ragsdale. So this is a game Southwest needs to win, or it could kind of spiral, I think, on them.
What about Page at Reagan? A couple of years ago, it was a shootout. Almost went to midnight.
It was a game where Page got delayed traveling over there on the buses because, surprise, an accident on Business 40, closing Business 40. That never happens, but they were stuck in traffic forever. Game started after 9 o'clock. It was like 47-45, something like that. Went down to the last play. Wild offense. Reagan does not have the kind of offense now that they had then. And Page is more of a defensive-oriented team, too. I think Page should win that game, although going on the road, you never know. But they're more likely, I think, to win it with their defense than they are with an explosive offense.
Who comes to your mind quickly, other than Alan Tisdale, who was kind of poised to be the Page defensive leader? Who else stands out on Page's defense so far for you?
Alex Gray is another very strong linebacker. The guy who's having a really, really good year for them is B.J. Turner. He's getting to the quarterback. He got a deflection on the potential tying field goal against Eastern Guilford. I mean, he's been a big-time player. He's a leader. He's one of the captains. He and Teasdale are captains, so the rest of the team respects him and enough to vote him as a team captain. He's been a solid player. Their linebacking core and another smaller, quick, aggressive front is the reason that their defense is so good. The secondary has kind of been up and down, but it's that front 7 that's really been a killer.
And their secondary was tough in previous years. The past couple of years had a very tough secondary.
Yeah, well, graduated some guys.
One of those kids took off, the level kids took off to Appalachian, didn't he?
Yep. He's up at Appalachian. He lost Micah Gafford, who was an offense and defensive guy.
He was a good little kid.
Just a tough football player.
Tough.
A lot of it brought a lot of energy on offense and defense. But it's a good defense, and Coach Rolfus, to his credit, didn't do a whole lot to change it. He just basically said, "You guys are doing a great job. I like what I see.
Smart move.
Let's just keep doing what we're doing because it works."
Who would you say would be your lock of the week this week? A guaranteed lock of the week win? Because I know you guys do your picks in the paper. You and Spencer get together and do your picks, and you've probably got several already darkened in, bold in there. So who's your lock of the week, man?
Wow, there's some simply because of mismatches where one team is just not very competitive, and I don't know if I'd want to go with one of those.
Couple on your sheet that you have before you, what's going to be in the paper tomorrow? This is online right now. Who are the teams you picked to win tomorrow night?
Well, let's see. We mentioned I think Southeast will give Dudley a game, but I don't think they're quite ready to take them yet. In terms of that Eastern Guilford and Smith, I gotta like Eastern Guilford. Smith, another team that's coming around, that's starting to build something. Young quarterback, sophomore Jordan Williams. I think that'll be a low-scoring game because Smith's strength is its defense, its weakness is offense. I could see Smith either not scoring or maybe scoring once, and Eastern Guilford is just a load on defense. I mean, that kept them in the game with Page.
Could be a little bit of a trap game there for Eastern too, coming off that.
I think there's a little bit of that possibility, but I just don't think Smith has enough offensively to really threaten them yet. Southwest and Northwest, I think, is going to be a very good game. I mean, I picked Northwest, but that's one of those games where I know I'm probably going to, whatever I picked, I knew I was probably going to be wrong. Same with Ragsdale and Northeast. I picked Ragsdale in that one, but never underestimate the Rams and Coach Bates' team. Page and Reagan, I like Page in that one. Reedsville playing a team from Virginia.
I like Reedsville no matter what they do. When they busted open Winston-Salem Reynolds and beat them like a dog, I said, gosh, Reedsville is for real again and again and again.
They're gonna play Northwest. That's the one game coming up before they go into conference.
Is Thomas Hennig going to be helpful for that game? And they get Thomas back.
Yeah, it would be nice. I talked to him a little bit up Saturday in Boone, and he looked great and played pretty well. But that Reedsville team is loaded. High Point Christian's a team that kind of flies under the radar a little bit. Another very strong private school team. They're going to play the only public school they play this year, McMichael. I think High Point Christian has too much for them in terms of skill positions.
Any upset specials this week?
I don't think I picked anybody who would be considered an upset. But like I said, that Southwest Northwest game and Northeast Ragsdale, I knew whoever I picked, I'm going to be wrong. Those are the two games I'm probably going to get wrong for sure, and maybe some others too.
And from the Southwest standpoint, they definitely need that win in a bad way. Northwest also needs that win, but I mean, it's getting close to conference season, not too far away.
Yeah, and Southwest in a conference with Dudley and Mount Tabor, it doesn't get easier for them. They're going to have some tough games ahead. Smith in that conference. The Metro, the new Metro, the 5-team Metro, that's where Northwest is going to be with Page, Grimsley, High Point Central, and Ragsdale. I think that league going into the season, I thought it'll be Page and no one else will contend. But I think those other 4 teams are kind of an interesting group. Who's going to finish second in that league? Who knows? And it's not like it's been the last few years where, other than the conference champion, they went by where they finished. Now they're using those Max Preps rankings, that esoteric formula they won't give out to determine where other teams are seated. So, you've got to do what you can in non-conference, and it's going to be tough. The conference games are going to be interesting.
What do you got for us at the highschoolextra.com website right now as you head to tomorrow? What's your big part you worked on today leading into tomorrow? What do you guys got?
Well, we've obviously got scouting reports and predictions for the games involving Guilford County and Rockingham County teams, as well as Bishop McGuinness. We cover them because even though they're in Forsyth County and Kernersville, because they have so many Guilford kids. And we also have a feature on some young men who are coming in here later. Southeast Guilford's Jax Hackett, Jalen Guy, Ryan Douglas, 3 outstanding baseball players. Coach Dave Beasley said that's my pitching rotation for this coming season. And great baseball players, great football players, great students, team leaders. A feature on what it's like to try to play 2 sports at an elite level like that and why they do it.
We'll let you get rolling. Thank you much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it as always, Andy.
News and Record. Check them out, highschoolextra.com, the News and Record site.